Hi everyone, welcome to Mr. Noctory, boring ancient history stories for sleep. Tonight, we're heading into the Greco-Persian Wars, and that one historical question. What if Persia had won? What would the world look like? What happened during Persia's invasion of Greece, the Ionian Revolt, and what pushed Darius I to seek revenge on Athens? Before we begin, if you really feel this is a nice little shelter for the late night, go ahead and like and subscribe, but only if you truly want to. Kind of like the rules in an old tavern. Only do it if you need a quiet place. And do you know what I love most? Reading the comments and seeing where you're watching from and what time it is. Whether it's New York or Norway, 1 in the morning or 5 in the morning, you're still here, and I see you. Now, dim the lights. Turn on a small fan if you have one. Not because it's hot, but for that soft buzzing sound. History is often a series of cascading events, but sometimes a tiny change can send shockwaves, enough to steer the entire world in a different direction. And in that river of history, the conflict between Greece and Persia stands out, not just as a clash of empires, but as a turning point that shaped Western civilization for thousands of years. So here's the intriguing question we need to ask. What if Persia had won? If the Persian Empire had conquered Greece, would it have been able to maintain its culture? Or would Greek civilization have been completely erased? Would values like democracy, philosophy, and art, the ones we cherish today, still exist in a world ruled by Persia? In this chapter, we'll explore the historical backdrop that led to this ancient showdown, so we can understand just how different things might have been if history had taken another path. Imagine a world where Persia triumphed, where Athens and Sparta were conquered, where the grand ideas of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle might never have existed. Would we have the kind of civilization we know today? The conflict between Greece and Persia didn't start with grand battles or the rise of great kings. It all truly began with a small revolt, one that would ripple through history and reshape the balance of power. The Ionian Revolt, which took place around 499 before the Common Era, was the spark that ignited the growing tension between the two empires, setting the stage for the Great War to come. The Ionians and their resentment under Persian rule. The Ionians, a group of Greek cities along the western coast of Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, had lived under Persian control for years. But like many peoples throughout history, Persian rule wasn't exactly easy to endure. The Ionians felt politically, economically, and socially oppressed. And things only got worse when Darius I came to power and enforced harsher policies on the empire's subject cities. In cities like Miletus and Ephesus, now part of Turkey, resentment toward Persian domination grew steadily. But instead of submitting, the Ionians rose up. They demanded not just freedom, but a return to self-governance and control over their own lands and politics. Athens and Eretria, the allies. The revolt wasn't just a lonely struggle by the Ionians. In a surprising and bold political move, two major Greek cities, Athens and Eretria, chose to support the Ionian cause. Athens, with its tradition of freedom and democracy, provided weapons and military strategy, while Eretria joined in with financial support. This aid from the Greek cities gave the revolt wider reach and greater significance, but it also lit a fire of rage and vengeance in the heart of Emperor Darius I. To him, this wasn't just interference. It was a direct challenge to the authority of the Persian Empire. Imagine you're a soldier in Athens, receiving orders to support the Ionian Revolt. You, someone who fights for freedom and democracy, suddenly swept into a distant conflict against a colossal empire like Persia. Would you feel excited, thinking you're helping another people reclaim their rights? Or would you feel afraid, knowing that fighting Persia isn't exactly a walk in the park? This wasn't just a question of ideals. It was a life or death decision. While the Ionians simply wanted freedom, Athens and Eretria were facing a massive enemy, Persia, an empire not just strong in military might, but capable of crushing rebellion with brutal power and ruthless strategy. This was the beginning of the war you're about to be part of. The Ionian Revolt ultimately failed. After a decade of fighting, the Greeks couldn't keep up the resistance against Persia's overwhelming strength. Miletus was destroyed, and the Ionian cities suffered heavy punishment from the Persians. But the story didn't end there. The Ionian Revolt became the fuel for Emperor Darius, who could not forgive this defiance. He swore that Athens and Eretria would pay, and it was this thirst for revenge that would lead to the great invasion to come. Greece and Persia, two empires whose destinies would become entwined in the years ahead, would go on to fight in legendary battles. But before those decisive clashes, we must understand that it all began with this small uprising. An uprising that seemed hopeless at first, but opened a new chapter in the confrontation between two great civilizations. By now, you've understood the deep connection between the Ionian Revolt and the later Persian invasion. These historical events weren't just battles. They were turning points that shaped the fate of an entire civilization. Just imagine, if Persia had won, how different would the world be? If you look at Greek history, no battle was more important or more symbolic than the Battle of Marathon. This was the moment not just for Greece, but for democracy and the core values of Western freedom, all standing on the edge of being erased. But instead of a tragic end, the Battle of Marathon became a symbol of belief and spiritual strength, a reminder that even in the face of a powerful enemy like Persia, victory is possible when people fight for freedom. When Darius attacked again. After the Ionian Revolt was crushed and Athens and Eretria were marked as enemies of Persia, Darius I could not forgive the defiance. This time, he decided to punish Athens, to crush any hopes the Greek cities had of freedom or independence. In the year 490 before the Common Era, the Persian army under Darius landed at Marathon, just 42 kilometers from Athens. Prepared and with overwhelming numbers, including cavalry and warships, the Persians were confident. Athens, though smaller in strength, had something special: unity and the resolve to defend their freedom. Facing the threat of annihilation, now imagine you're a soldier in Athens. You've just heard that Persia, with its massive army, is approaching. You're not just fighting for your homeland, you're fighting for meaning. The democracy you and your city have built is now under threat. How do you feel? Anxious, because your numbers are so few. Afraid, because if you lose, Athens might be wiped out and Greek democracy will collapse. But deep inside, you're also filled with hope, because you believe you're fighting for something greater, for a freedom no one can take away. One decision, one defining battle. With that spirit, the Greeks chose to face the Persians head-on at Marathon, even though they had only around 10,000 men, versus Persia's 25,000. Miltiades, the Greek commander, made a daring decision. Instead of holding their position, the Greeks would attack, catching the Persians off guard. Miltiades devised an unexpected strategy. He split his forces into two wings, a strong frontal assault and a smaller force circling behind the Persians. This trapped the enemy in confusion, unable to react in time. A glorious victory and its historic meaning. Despite being outnumbered, the Greeks achieved a total victory at Marathon. After a day of fierce combat, the Persians retreated to their ships, and Darius I had to accept a painful defeat. Marathon was more than a military win. It was a triumph of the Greek spirit. It proved that even the weaker side, with determination and strategy, could defeat a more powerful enemy. This battle confirmed that Greece could stand against Persia, even without a massive army, and that democracy could survive, at least for a while longer. But this was not the end. In reality, it was just a temporary setback for Persia. Later, Xerxes, son of Darius, would return to continue the war. Now picture yourself, an Athenian soldier, standing on the battlefield after the victory. Pride floods your heart as you realize what just happened. You've defeated a mighty empire. You've defended your home and the democracy you love. You haven't just beaten Persia. You've defended something greater, the ideals of liberty and self-rule. But you also know this is just one part of a longer war. This victory will not last unless there are more battles, more bold strategies, and the same unwavering resolve. But today you've saved Greece. You've defended the freedom of your people. And most importantly, you've proven one thing. Greece is not easily conquered. The Battle of Marathon wasn't just a military victory. It became a symbol of courage and determination to fight for freedom. If the Greeks had lost this battle, history might have taken a very different path. Athens could have been erased. Democracy could have died in its cradle. And the Western world might never have known the ideas of Greece's great philosophers. Above all, Marathon sparked a wave of pride and hope among the Greeks. It reminds us that sometimes, with one right decision and a daring strategy, even the weak can triumph over the powerful. The battle is over, but the Greek dream of survival lives on. Though they couldn't stop every Persian invasion, the hope for freedom would live on in Greek hearts, inspiring generations to come. After the Battle of Marathon, Emperor Darius I of Persia had to face a bitter defeat. This wasn't just a military loss. It was a psychological blow to an empire once thought to be unbeatable. Persia's invasion of Greece had been halted, and the Greeks, with their fierce spirit, had successfully defended their democracy. But this defeat didn't just affect Darius and his army. It left a lasting impact on the history of the ancient world. The Persian retreat, Darius's fury. Darius, with his overwhelming numbers and a clear strategy, never expected that the Greeks could win at Marathon. Despite the heavy loss, Darius didn't accept defeat easily. To him, Marathon was an unforgivable humiliation. The Persian soldiers were forced into a shameful retreat, and every attempt to advance on Athens had failed. In the end, he had to order a full withdrawal, carrying with him deep anger and a fierce resolve for revenge. The Battle of Marathon didn't just interrupt Persia's invasion. It also damaged Darius's reputation. A ruler once known for wisdom and power now had to face the shame of being defeated by an opponent he once considered beneath concern. The consequences and plans for revenge. Even in retreat, Darius never forgot his long-term goal. He knew that one defeat wouldn't weaken Persia's power, not if he sought vengeance. Losing Athens was a stain on the empire, and Darius I swore he would return to destroy the city. The loss at Marathon was only a temporary setback. it would not stop him from completing his ambition to conquer all of Greece. He also realized that it wasn't just his army that had been hurt. The pride of the Persian Empire itself had been deeply wounded. This defeat led Darius to begin preparations for an even greater invasion. But before he could finalize the plans for a second attack, misfortune struck. Darius died in the year 486 before the Common Era, bringing a pause to his revenge campaign. The war he planned would now fall into the hands of his son, Xerxes I. Imagine being a soldier in Darius's army, standing on the field of Marathon after Persia's crushing defeat. You fought with everything you had, only to retreat in disgrace. Now imagine how you'd feel when Emperor Darius, once admired and trusted, orders the withdrawal. Would you feel anger, or maybe a bit of fear, wondering what the emperor would do after such a failure? In your mind, this loss could mean bloody revenge, not just for the Greeks, but possibly for you and your fellow soldiers. The Battle of Marathon wasn't just a military failure. It was a wound to the pride of every Persian warrior. You can feel the weight of this loss. And the one thing you know for sure is, Darius will never forget this humiliation. Though Darius had to retreat, he never let go of that defeat. It didn't just damage Persia's reputation, it ignited an intense hatred in his heart. The loss at Marathon may have been the end, for now, but the war was far from over. With Darius's death, his son Xerxes I would take up the cause. He would not only seek revenge, he would aim to conquer Greece to restore Persia's glory. The Battle of Marathon was over, but it raised a critical question. Could Greece continue to stand strong, or would it face a stronger Persian Empire in the future? Though the victory at Marathon was a turning point in history, Greece was not yet safe. History marched on, and the Greeks would face even greater challenges ahead. But the Battle of Marathon, with the glorious Greek victory, would always remain a symbol of resilience and courage. Proof that even against powerful enemies, victory is possible if we fight for our ideals. Persia's invasion of Greece wasn't just a story of battles and victories. It was also a story of succession, of shifting leadership within a vast empire. And at the moment of Darius I's death, Xerxes I, his son, rose to continue the mission, to conquer Greece and restore glory to the Persian Empire. The death of Darius I, his life and legacy. Darius I, Emperor of the Persian Empire, ruled a long and successful reign. He expanded Persia's borders across Asia, from India to Egypt. Darius was also responsible for building a strong administrative system with a tight network of officials and taxation. However, despite all his achievements, his campaign in Greece was a failure he could never forget. The Battle of Marathon was a dark stain in Darius's career. Even after preparing a strong offensive, the Persian army lost to the Greeks, forcing Darius into a humiliating retreat. But Darius was not an emperor who gave up easily. He was determined to return for revenge. And this path was passed down to Xerxes, his son, when he died in the year 486 before the Common Era. Xerxes I, the heir and his vow of revenge. With Darius's death, Xerxes I ascended the Persian throne, driven not only by a desire to avenge his father's defeat, but by ambitions of even greater conquest. Xerxes wasn't just any heir. He inherited a mighty empire, and with it came immense pressure. So he decided to plan a larger, more ambitious invasion of Greece. This time, not just for revenge, but for complete domination. Xerxes began preparations, building a powerful army and an enormous navy. This would be the second invasion, and this time, Greece would not find victory so easily. The transformation of Persia under Xerxes' rule. Under Xerxes' leadership, Persia intensified its military and strategic efforts. He didn't just want to defeat Greece, he wanted to prove Persia's absolute might. The administrative system built by Darius remained, but Xerxes took harsher steps, using military power and severe punishments to secure his rule. However, the changes weren't just military. Xerxes launched grand projects to solidify Persia's power, monumental constructions and vast military expeditions to assert his dominance. One of the most iconic symbols of that ambition was the construction of a bridge across the Hellespont, a massive engineering project Xerxes used to move troops from Asia to Europe. Imagine being a common citizen in the Persian Empire at this time, as Xerxes I took the throne and vowed to continue the war with Greece. As someone from the lower classes, how would you feel watching the power transfer from Darius to Xerxes? Would you hope for a better future, or fear that Xerxes would lead Persia into a bloodier, riskier war than ever before? With Xerxes' determination and vision, you could feel the strength of the empire growing. But you also knew a full-scale war with Greece was inevitable, and that it would not be easy. With the rise of Xerxes I, Persia no longer sought just revenge. It sought to assert its dominance over the entire ancient world. His second invasion of Greece would be a decisive war, not just for Greece, but for Persia itself. But could Xerxes achieve his ambitions, or would he suffer the same kind of failure his father did? Meanwhile, Greece remained defiant, upholding its democracy and its values of freedom, facing mounting threats and brutal battles. But the war was far from over, and a fiercer confrontation was waiting for both sides. After Darius I died, his son Xerxes I ascended the throne and continued his father's strategy, revenge and conquest of Greece. After the defeat at Marathon, Persia had no room to retreat. Xerxes I didn't just want to avenge his father. He wanted to prove the absolute power of the Persian Empire. And this time, his invasion wouldn't simply be a war. It would be total domination, determined to crush every trace of Greek resistance. Building a massive army. Xerxes didn't just prepare a large army. He laid out a plan far more detailed. Persia now had a powerful military force, and under Xerxes' command, they assembled the greatest army of the ancient world to that point. The Persian army included infantry, cavalry, chariots, and notably, a massive navy with over 1,200 warships. This reflected Persia's ambition to dominate the entire Mediterranean region. Xerxes' goal wasn't only to invade Greece, but to restore Persia's honor after the defeat at Marathon. He prepared a full-scale campaign, from assembling troops to building the bridge across the Hellespont, a grand and ambitious engineering feat, meant to cross the sea and move his army from Asia into Europe. That Hellespont bridge, makeshift, fragile and full of difficulty, would become a symbol of Xerxes' resolve and immense vision. Preparation, provisions, supplies and strategy. An invasion of this scale required meticulous planning for food and weapons. Xerxes ordered cities and regions throughout the empire to prepare enough provisions for a long campaign. Persian forces were dispersed across various lands to gather grain, dried food, and military materials. It wasn't just the army. Xerxes also prepared a psychological warfare strategy. He wanted the Greeks to believe Persia was unbeatable, that this empire could crush anyone who dared to resist. In previous withdrawals, this strategy may have helped Persia easily occupy Greek cities and lands without the fierce resistance they had once encountered. Uniting the Greek forces. On the Greek side, though democracy and political fragmentation were weaknesses, facing an invading force pushed them to set aside internal disputes and unite to defend their homeland. Athens and Sparta remained key powers, but this time they faced a full-scale war, not only on land, but also at sea. Athens, with naval strength, and Sparta, with elite warriors, cooperated to confront the Persian threat. While Sparta prepared for a major land battle at Thermopylae, Athens devised a naval defense plan, using its fleet to slow down Persia's advance. Now imagine being a Greek citizen at this moment. Hearing that Persia was preparing a total assault on your homeland, what would you feel? Would you be anxious, frightened, imagining that Persia, with its powerful army and detailed strategy, would crush all Greek resistance? Or would you feel resilient, knowing that Greek warriors, small but mighty, would not easily surrender? Fear and uncertainty were inevitable. But one thing was certain. Greeks never gave up their freedom or their democracy easily. This war wasn't just for survival. It was a fight for the ideals of a civilization that refused to bow. The Second Persian invasion, under Xerxes I, had begun. A mighty empire, with a massive army and a clear strategy, was preparing to threaten all of Greece. The monumental constructions, the careful planning of supplies and tactics, all pointed to a Persia determined not just to defeat, but to completely conquer Greece. The Greeks, facing a far stronger enemy, had no choice but to rise and defend what they believed in. This invasion wouldn't just be another battle. It would be a life or death test for Greek democracy and culture itself. Greece was preparing for brutal confrontation. So what do you think? Could Persia win this time? Or would Greece pull off another miraculous victory like Marathon? The battles of Thermopylae and Salamis would decide everything. But would they mark the end of Greece, or its chance to rise once again? As the Persian invasion began to strike into Greece, all eyes turned to Sparta, a land known for warriors forged in unbreakable discipline, for a spirit that refused defeat. The Battle of Thermopylae became one of history's legendary clashes, not just because of the Spartans' extraordinary bravery, but because of their sacrifice and their unyielding defiance in the face of the mighty Persian army. A battle that could not be lost. To understand the meaning of Thermopylae, we must return to the moment it all began. Xerxes I, having prepared his massive army and war plans, advanced into mainland Greece. One of the key passageways into Greece was the narrow pass of Thermopylae, a bottleneck connecting northern and southern Greece. It was a critical point the Greeks had to defend at all costs. Sparta, renowned for its elite soldiers and strategic warfare, was tasked with holding Thermopylae. Under the command of King Leonidas, approximately 300 carefully selected Spartan warriors, joined by a number of Greek allies, stood to face a Persian force of over 100,000 men. It was an uneven fight, but a massive test for both sides. A moment hanging by a thread. King Leonidas and his Spartan warriors, vastly outnumbered, chose to stand firm at Thermopylae. It wasn't just a military decision. It was a test of endurance and sacrifice. Spartans never surrendered. Their legendary resolve became a timeless symbol in history. Now imagine, you are a Spartan warrior at that moment. You and your comrades know you have only 300 Spartans, a few allied troops, and no way to retreat. And your brave king, Leonidas, has ordered you to stand and fight to the end. Because holding Thermopylae isn't just holding a pass, it's holding the hope of all Greece. The decisive battle sacrifice. For 3 days, the Persians couldn't break through. Despite overwhelming numbers and cavalry, the Spartan warriors held the line at this narrow pass. They didn't fight for personal gain. They fought for freedom, for the future of Greek civilization. Using precise defensive tactics, fighting in small coordinated groups, they turned the terrain to their advantage and held off the Persian flood. After 3 relentless days, a Greek traitor revealed a secret path, allowing the Persians to circle behind and strike from the rear. That was the turning point. The pass had been compromised. The Spartans had no option left but to sacrifice themselves for the people of Greece. Though defeated, the Battle of Thermopylae became a symbol of bravery and sacrifice. The Greeks couldn't win that day, but their courage inspired other city-states to rise, especially during the later Battle of Salamis, where the Persian navy would be crushed. Now imagine again, you are one of those Spartan warriors on the battlefield of Thermopylae. You know your numbers are few, and the Persian army is overwhelming. Your king Leonidas has ordered you to hold the line and fight to the last. How do you feel facing such a mighty enemy, knowing you can't run, can't quit? Do you feel fear, or do you feel like part of something eternal? You'll fight to the end, not just for yourself, but for Greece's future. The sacrifice of the Spartan warriors will forever remain a symbol of courage and endurance. They weren't just soldiers, they were role models of the warrior spirit we still admire. Though they lost on the battlefield, they etched their names into history and inspired the generations that followed. The Battle of Thermopylae ended, but the Spartan sacrifice was no mere loss. It was a moral victory. Even though they couldn't stop the Persian advance, their defiance kept the flame of hope alive in the hearts of the Greeks. This battle will forever be a monument to Spartan bravery, to those who fought and died for freedom and democracy. So what do you think about this battle? Could Sparta hold on to its fighting spirit? And could Persia finally win this time? Or will the Greeks rise again, just like the Spartan warriors once did? As the Persian army under Xerxes I pushed deeper into Greece, the Greeks faced an overwhelming force. After the defeat at Thermopylae, where 300 brave Spartan warriors fell, all Greek eyes turned to Athens' navy. The Battle of Salamis became a decisive turning point, a moment when Greece not only stood firm but rose in defiance, delivering a stunning victory and striking a heavy blow against the Persian Empire. Persia wins, but cannot control the outcome. After capturing Athens, Xerxes I believed total victory was within reach. The city lay in ruins. Leonidas and his Spartans were dead. But Xerxes had no idea that this victory was only the beginning of a series of defeats to come. The Persian navy, vast and powerful, suffered from severe tactical disorganization. When entering the waters of Salamis, one of Greece's most strategic regions, they encountered unexpected turmoil. Unlike their land forces, the fleet faced natural obstacles they could not command, leaving them vulnerable. Meanwhile, Athens, though ravaged on land, held a major advantage at sea. Under the leadership of Themistocles, the Athenians had prepared thoroughly for this battle, with strong defensive strategies and a deep understanding of the terrain. Themistocles' brilliant strategy. Themistocles, a leader of Athens, saw a major opportunity in the battle at Salamis. Despite the Persian numerical advantage, he planned to use the narrow straits of Salamis to limit their ability to leverage their size. He knew that in tight waters, the smaller Greek fleet could strike more precisely, neutralizing their disadvantage. Though some wanted to retreat south and defend elsewhere, Themistocles skillfully persuaded them to stay, insisting that Salamis was their one chance to defeat Persia once and for all. He built trust and crafted a strategy that few leaders would dare, luring the Persians into a trap they couldn't escape. The Battle of Salamis, the decisive strike. When the battle began, the Greek fleet used small, agile warships to approach and attack the Persians. The Persians, with large and heavy ships, couldn't maneuver in the narrow waters. Caught between the sails of the Greek navy, the Persian fleet fell into chaos. Themistocles gave the order to attack, and the Greeks began sinking ship after ship. While the Persian sailors panicked in the tight space, the Greeks launched relentless strikes. One by one, the Persian ships were pierced and sunk. In the distance, Xerxes watched his fleet being destroyed, and it forced him to retreat, leaving behind a battered Persian empire. Now picture yourself on the battlefield at Salamis, fighting side by side with your comrades against the Persians. After a long and brutal struggle, as the tide of battle turns, how do you feel? Joy, pride, and hope surge in your chest as you watch the Persian fleet sink one ship at a time. Surely nothing compares to the feeling of this victory. You know that not just this battle, but the future of all Greece is being shaped at this very moment. This is a historic victory, and you, as an Athenian soldier, will always remember the moment when Greece rose like a wave. The Battle of Salamis was not just a military win, it was a triumph of intellect and strategy. Though outnumbered, the Greeks had brilliant tactics and knew how to use the terrain to their advantage. They did what no one thought possible. They defeated a mighty Persian empire, proving that sometimes intelligence and resilience can overcome any military strength. Xerxes was forced to withdraw, and after this battle, the tide of war began to shift. The Battle of Salamis brought a new wave of hope to the Greeks, restoring faith in victory, and more importantly, laying the groundwork for unity among the Greek city-states to resist Persia in the battles yet to come. The war between Greece and Persia was not just a military conflict, but a battle of ideals. Greek freedom and democracy versus Persian absolutism and centralized power. Had the Greeks failed to win at Marathon, Salamis, and in the battles that followed, Persia wouldn't have merely conquered Greece. It might have dominated the entire Mediterranean region, and Western history would be completely different. Imagine a world where Persia emerged victorious, where Greece was conquered, and its democratic, philosophical values never blossomed. What would such a world look like? How would history have unfolded? The end of Greek democracy. If Persia had won, one of Greece's greatest legacies, democracy, would never have been born. Greece, where the concept of democracy was first tested and developed, would have fallen under Persian control, an empire where power was concentrated in one person, Emperor Xerxes. Greek city-states, from Athens to Sparta, would no longer be the autonomous communities we know. Instead, Persia would have imposed an authoritarian system, where absolute power belonged to the emperor and his officials. The ideas of freedom, equality, and self-determination that Greece had built over centuries would be crushed, and Athenian democracy would never have the chance to grow. Though Greek people might retain aspects of their culture under Persian rule, they would no longer participate in political decisions, nor live in a society where power was shared and justice pursued. The loss of Greek culture. Greek culture left an indelible mark on world history. From philosophy to art, from literature to science, the thoughts of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle shaped Western civilization. But if Persia had won, this culture might have been swept away or faded under the rule of a vastly different imperial system. Persia, with its centralized despotism, had no room for open philosophical debate, citizens gathering to discuss politics, or the development of science based on logic and experimentation. Such values would be extinguished, and Greek culture might survive only as distant memory. What's more, Athens' majestic temples and Greek masterpieces of art might have been destroyed or replaced by Persian symbols. An empire whose architecture and art focused primarily on glorifying the emperor's power. A stronger Persian empire. If Persia conquered Greece, it would have gained easier access to expand its territory, not only across the Mediterranean, but into Europe, North Africa, and beyond. With Greece subdued, Persia would face no major obstacles in controlling key regions and extending its influence. It might have become a superpower, not just in Asia, but also in Europe for a long time. Persian culture would dominate, replacing the influence of Greek culture. The ideals of liberty and democracy that Greece developed would never get the chance to spread across the world as they eventually did in real history. If Persia had won, the loss of Western values. Most significantly, if Persia had won, the core values of Western civilization, like democracy, free philosophy, and scientific development, might have been lost. The world would lack the democratic ideals we cherish today. Europe's future might not be a Greek-inspired civilization, but one where power resided in a single empire, under the absolute control of a king. Greece's philosophical and political legacies would not influence the world as they did in reality. There would be no Alexander the Great to spread Greek culture eastward and build a vast Greek empire. Instead, Persian influence would replace Greek culture and ideas in a world devoid of the freedoms we know today. A world without Alexander the Great. One of the greatest consequences of a Persian victory would be the absence of Alexander the Great. Alexander, who expanded the Greek Empire and spread Greek thought across nations, would never have emerged if Persia had taken Greece. And this means that a great Greek Empire would never have existed. Greek culture would not have spread through the Middle East and Palestine, and Western civilization would not have evolved the way it has today. Instead of being Alexander's rival, Persia would have ruled everything, and Greek influence would have dimmed under Persian dominance. This would result in a vastly different political and cultural environment, where Greek values had no chance to shine. If Persia had won and conquered Greece, Western history would no longer resemble what we know. There would be no Greek democracy, no Greek philosophy, and no Alexander the Great to expand Greek culture. Instead, the world would be ruled by a Persian empire, with absolute power concentrated in one king, and with little room for the freedom and equality we hope to see in society. So what do you think? If Persia had conquered Greece, how would the world be different? Could Western civilization have developed as it did? Or would everything have been replaced by the influence of Persia? If Persia had won and occupied Greece, this empire would not have stopped at dominating part of the Mediterranean, but would have expanded its influence and power across the entire ancient world. A world shaped under Persian rule would have undergone profound changes in culture, politics, and society, with lasting influence not just in Greece, but in many other civilizations in the region. Imagine an unimpeded Persian empire, where Xerxes' control was absolute and Persian culture permeated every corner of the Western world. The world, as we know it today, might not be the same. Greek values might have been replaced or even extinguished, and Persian influence would have become the dominant force, a vastly expanding empire. If Persia had won, the empire would not have stopped at conquering Greece, but might have spread throughout Europe, Asia, and even North Africa. With successive victories, Persia would consolidate its power, gradually controlling key trade routes and maintaining strong diplomatic and commercial relations with other civilizations. Under Xerxes' leadership, Persia would easily continue to expand its territory, possibly achieving comprehensive domination over the Mediterranean and building a very strong political and administrative system. Persian policy would not only aim at territorial expansion, but also at solidifying its global status. They would use their military and financial power as a model for other nations in the region. Persian culture replacing Greek culture. One of the biggest changes if Persia had conquered Greece would be the replacement of Greek culture with Persian culture. Greek values like democracy, philosophy, liberal arts, and science could be overshadowed under the rule of a despotic empire, where power was concentrated in the hands of the emperor. Persian culture, with its emperor worship, royal festivals, and grand art glorifying the ruler's power, would gradually take over and replace Greek culture. Legacies like monuments of philosophers, Greek works of art, and architecture would no longer be honored. Instead, Persia would build massive constructions showcasing military power and the emperor's absolute authority. Persian culture, with its rituals venerating the gods and the emperor, would replace the Greek values of liberty and equality. Greek philosophy might never flourish, and scientific knowledge could be restricted under Persian authoritarianism. Political and social reforms. If Persia had won, they would not only change the culture, but might also reform the political and social systems of the conquered lands. Greece, with its independent city-state system, polis, would be absorbed into a centralized empire where absolute power belonged to Xerxes and his officials. Greek cities would no longer have autonomy, but would be turned into provinces under Persian control. In addition, social hierarchy in the Persian Empire would see little change. Particularly for slaves, women's rights, and foreigners, strict Persian regulations would continue to apply. The Greek aristocracy, if not eliminated, could see their power severely limited and lose the ability to participate in political decisions as before. Relations with other empires. Persia would not stop at dominating Greece, but would also expand diplomatic and commercial relationships with the Egyptian, Indian, and other Eastern empires. This network could bring Persia dominance not just militarily, but also economically. With Greece under its control, Persia would not only increase its influence in the Mediterranean, but also strengthen its reach in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Such dominance might lead to a world without Alexander the Great or Rome, and Persian culture would become the foundation for civilizations in the region, replacing Greek culture which once dominated and spread philosophy, art, and science through Rome and Western cities. If Persia had won and taken Greece, Western history would have taken a completely different path. A powerful Persian empire would not only change Greece's political and cultural structure, but might also dominate the entire Mediterranean, Europe, and North Africa. Greek values like democracy, free philosophy, and science might be replaced or lost under the rule of a despotic empire. A world where Persia held the upper hand would create a political and social environment entirely different from what we know as the Western world. But would Greek culture be completely wiped out? Or would new civilizations be born from the very seeds of Greece, even under Persian control? When Persia won and occupied Greece, a new world began to form under the empire's rule. Greek democracy might be erased, and ideas of freedom and equality could be replaced by the Persian autocracy. But could Greece rise again from the ruins and reclaim the values of freedom it had struggled to uphold for centuries? In this chapter, we will explore whether, in a world dominated by Persia, Greece could keep its flame of hope alive, and whether Greek culture and knowledge could survive and one day rise again with renewed strength. Even under Persian occupation, the Greek spirit of freedom and democracy would never be fully extinguished. From Marathon to Salamis, the Greeks proved that they would never easily surrender to oppression. If Persia ruled Greece, Greek uprisings could still occur, though they would face brutal suppression by the Persian Empire. Oppressed Greeks would always long for freedom, and those desires could spark revolts, just as the Ionian revolt had done before. Not only in Greece, but even across Persian-held lands, the ideas of liberty and justice would continue to exist, and might spread, laying the groundwork for a powerful resurgence in the future. Though Greek culture might be pushed back under Persian rule, it could never be completely erased. The Greeks had built a magnificent legacy in philosophy, science, and art, and it would not be so easily destroyed. The philosophical works of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the mathematical studies of Euclid, or the ancient architecture of Athens would still endure, perhaps underground, and one day they could be revived. In potential uprisings, Greek ideals of democracy, freedom, and justice would become the inspiration for those who sought to overthrow Persian rule. These values would help sustain the flame of hope, and when the time was right, Greece might rise once more. Even under Persian domination, Greek city-states would never fully abandon their independence. Sparta, with its military culture and fierce traditions, would not yield easily. And Athens, with its belief in democracy and creativity, would always be a birthplace for ideas of liberty and resistance. This means that while Persia might control Greek territory, the independent spirit of its cities would never be entirely destroyed. The Greeks would continue seeking ways to resist oppression, and when the moment came, they would rise up, creating a powerful wave of rebellion. No matter how hard Persia tried, the Greek flame of freedom might blaze again, one day. One thing is certain: uprisings would never cease. Though Persia might use its mighty army to suppress rebellion, the Greek people's hope and yearning for freedom would not be so easily crushed. Athens and Sparta might find a way to reconnect and unite with other city-states to fight together against Persian rule. As the Persian Empire gradually weakened under constant uprisings, Greece might regain control. The alliances among Greek city-states would become a force not to be underestimated, and Greek democracy might rise again. In the end, no matter how history changed, one person could never be erased: Alexander the Great. With his patriotism and desire for conquest, Alexander would carry on Greece's legacy, bringing Greek culture eastward and expanding his empire. Even if Persia had won, the Greek spirit would never be extinguished, and Alexander would be the one to restore it, not just in Greece, but across Asia. Though Persia might win in a war for power, Greek culture and spirit could never be completely destroyed. the values of liberty, democracy, and knowledge would always find a way to survive, even under the harshest conditions. And one day, Greece would rise again, bringing forth a world of freedom and equality, just as Socrates and Plato once dreamed. Could Greece win in that return, or would Persia continue to rule forever? Greece remains a symbol of resilience and hope, and one day the flame of that civilization may burn brightly once more. After years of oppression under Persian rule, Greece once again rose, not only with hope, but with the strength of timeless ideas and enduring ambition. Alexander the Great, the son of Philip II, became the perfect heir to Greek civilization, carrying with him the desire to conquer not just the ancient world, but to spread Greek culture wherever he went. In this chapter, we'll explore the journey of Alexander the Great, from his youth to the creation of a vast empire, and his role in reviving Greek culture and continuing the legacy of democracy, philosophy, and art from Athens. Alexander, born into the royal family of Macedon, was the son of King Philip II, who had unified the Greek city-states and laid the foundation for a powerful empire. But unlike other heirs, Alexander didn't just inherit power, he chose his own path. Under the strict education and profound knowledge of Aristotle, Alexander soon revealed his vision and immense ambition. From a young age, Alexander showed exceptional military talent, commanding small troops in campaigns and facing serious challenges even as a teenager. His fighting spirit and determination helped solidify belief in his leadership, and when Philip II died, Alexander officially ascended the throne and continued the strategy his father had begun. Alexander the Great was never content with ruling a fixed land. He longed to expand the Greek Empire across the entire ancient world, and he pursued this goal through a series of massive conquests. His aim wasn't just military victory, but to bring Greek culture to the regions he conquered. Alexander's first campaign took place in Asia Minor, where he defeated the Persian army and pushed his empire eastward. He then moved into Egypt, where he was hailed as a great king, and founded Alexandria, a city that would become a cultural hub of the ancient world. From Egypt, he advanced into Persia, defeating Xerxes II and Darius III, ultimately bringing the Persian Empire under his control. His campaign continued through India, with major battles at Hydaspes, where Alexander faced King Porus's army. This victory allowed him to expand his empire to the Indus River. One of Alexander the Great's greatest legacies lay not only in his military victories, but in spreading Greek culture across the territories he conquered. Hellenization, or the process of Greek influence, was how Alexander brought Greek language, culture, art, and philosophy to the East. Alexander didn't just build new cities like Alexandria in Egypt. He encouraged the people in new territories to adopt Greek culture. Greek philosophy and art were spread from ancient Greece to Egypt, Persepolis, Susa, and eventually India. He laid a strong foundation for the growth of Greek civilization for centuries, even though his empire did not last long. Alexander was not only a great military leader, he was a bearer of hope for Greek democracy. But his conquests were not solely about war and territorial expansion. He carried within him the Greek spirit, the desire to develop democracy and philosophy rooted in Athens' values. While Greek cities under Persian rule may have lost their autonomy or democratic systems, Alexander built new political structures in his founded cities, encouraging civic participation in decision-making, though not fully democratic like in Athens. Though Alexander the Great did not live long enough to see his empire endure, his legacy remains eternal. Greek culture was not only preserved in his empire, it spread into other civilizations. The cities Alexander founded became centers of learning and culture for centuries to come. Alexander bridged east and west, creating a new culture where Greek values blended with new elements from Egypt, Persia, and India, forming a diverse and harmonious world. You are a soldier in Alexander the Great's army. You fought across battlefields from Asia Minor to Egypt, and now you're marching into Persia. What do you feel as you look upon the cities you've conquered, places where you carry Greek culture? Do you feel proud of what you've accomplished, or do you reflect on the changes you're bringing to this world? Alexander the Great was not just a brilliant military commander. He was the one who carried forward the Greek legacy, spreading the cultural values of Athens, Sparta, and other Greek cities across the globe. Though he didn't live long enough to secure his empire, Alexander revived Greek culture, laying the foundation for the Western world as we know it today. History is always full of pivotal moments, wars and decisions that can completely reshape the world. In the story between Greece and Persia, we've witnessed a confrontation that was not only between powerful armies, but between ideals, the democracy and freedom of Greece versus the authoritarian rule of Persia. Each battle, each decision, and each move carved out a new path for history, one that influenced not just these two empires, but the entire Western civilization that followed. The end of this war was not just about military victory or defeat. It was a story of sacrifice, fighting spirit, and unyielding ideals. Even if Persia had won, Greece would never have lost its flame of liberty and democracy. These values, though oppressed, would have continued to survive and find ways to rise again, leading to future struggles, and ultimately to the moment when Alexander the Great brought Greek culture wherever he went. If Persia had won, history would have taken a completely different turn. Greek democracy would have been extinguished, Greek culture might have been replaced, and Persia could have expanded its dominance, not only across the Mediterranean, but throughout Europe, North Africa, and Asia. In such a world, values like freedom, equality, and self-determination would have had no soil to grow, and Western civilization would have faced a major turning point. But even if Persia controlled Greece, the values and longing for freedom among the Greek people could never be destroyed. The fighting spirit of the Greeks would always find a way to return, igniting continuous revolts. And one day, Greece would find a way to rise from the ruins of oppression. Though oppressed under Persian rule, the Greek spirit of freedom and democracy would never be fully extinguished. As with rebellions throughout history, those values would continue to grow in the hearts of the Greek people. Not only in Greece, but in other occupied regions, ideas of liberty and justice could still emerge and spread. As the Persian Empire gradually weakened under constant rebellions, Greece might return, stronger than ever before. Those ideals of freedom, democracy, and philosophy would form the foundation for a new resurgence, where the Greeks would reclaim their right to self-rule and rebuild their civilization. Even if Greece were conquered, Greek culture would never be completely destroyed. Values like democracy, philosophy, and science would live on in history, either in hidden forms or through other civilizations. The legacy of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle would be passed down and preserved, not necessarily in the ancient Greek cities, but perhaps through future uprisings and conquests. This knowledge would become a source of inspiration for future generations. And Alexander the Great, through his conquests, would be the one to carry Greek culture across the world, creating a new world where Greek culture was honored and celebrated. Alexander the Great was the final heir to the Greek legacy, elevating the civilization to greatness. Even though Persia may have won the war, it was Alexander who brought about the revival of Greek values. He expanded the Greek Empire, not only defeating Persia, but also spreading Greek culture, philosophy, and thought everywhere he went. With military victory and the fusion of Greek culture into Eastern civilizations, Alexander proved that the Greek spirit would never be lost. And though he died young, his legacy of Greek culture and freedom lived on in the empires that followed. In the end, the question of Persia's victory is not just a military question. It's a story about ideals, about spirit and the desire for freedom. Even if Persia could win, Greece would never be entirely erased. The Greek spirit of democracy, liberty, and philosophy would continue to live on, in every rebellion, and ultimately in Alexander the Great, the one who revived Greek civilization across the world. Surely, even as the world changes, Greek civilization will continue to rise and bring eternal values to humanity. Justinian the Fun, the last great Roman emperor, year 527 to 565. On a cold day in the year 482 AD, in a small village in what is now northern Macedonia, a boy was born with the name Justinian. No one knew that in the years to come, this boy would become one of the greatest emperors in the history of the Byzantine Empire. But at that time, Justinian was not a child born into royalty, nor was he pampered with lavish gifts. In reality, the boy lived in a poor family, with no power or prestige. Justinian was born into a modest family. His parents were farmers and ordinary citizens. However, his destiny changed when his uncle, Justin, a former soldier and farmer, rose through the ranks and became emperor of the Byzantine Empire in the year 518. Justin, who had endured many hardships, knew that change could come from giving opportunities to young, talented individuals. Recognizing his nephew's intelligence and exceptional qualities, Justin decided to bring Justinian from the countryside to Constantinople. Brought to the capital of the empire, Justinian was educated in a challenging environment. It wasn't just about learning theology and Roman traditions, but also about laying a strong foundation to understand how an empire functions. During these years, Justinian was taught not only about law and military strategy, but also instilled with values of faith and morality, critical elements in shaping a future leader. With cautious yet determined steps, Justinian gained the respect of the court. His uncle, Justin, not only provided him with an excellent education, but also supported the building of Justinian's political career. However, despite all he had learned, Justinian's path to the throne was not always smooth. Power struggles within the royal family and foreign threats posed significant challenges. Yet no one could have predicted that after Justin's death in 527, Justinian would rise and become emperor of the Byzantine Empire. A common boy with no special title now held the fate of one of the world's most powerful empires. With unshakable determination and far-reaching vision, Justinian embarked on an ambitious journey to restore and elevate the Byzantine Empire, guiding it through challenges and creating a great legacy remembered for generations. It was from here that the first step of a great emperor was marked, with one hope and sole objective: to restore the great Roman Empire. As soon as he ascended the throne in 527, Justinian I was not only an emperor with absolute power, but also carried within him a grand vision: to restore the glory of the Roman Empire. But for him, restoration wasn't just about reclaiming lost territories. It was about reviving everything that had once made the Roman Empire great: power, law, and culture. It was not a simple mission, but Justinian had the ambition and determination to turn his dream into reality. To accomplish this, Justinian quickly realized that without strengthening the internal structure of the empire first, expanding its territory would only remain a distant dream. He began by reforming the administrative and legal system. One of his first and most significant actions was commissioning the compilation of the Corpus Juris Civilis, body of civil law, a comprehensive code that unified the legal regulations of the Roman Empire, which had fallen into disarray over centuries. This became one of Justinian's greatest legacies, not only for the Byzantine Empire, but for the entire legal foundation of Europe in later centuries. However, Justinian did not stop at internal consolidation. He looked beyond, determined to reclaim the lands the Roman Empire had lost in previous centuries. This marked the beginning of his grand military campaigns. Justinian's goal was clear: not just to restore territory, but to prove that the Roman Empire still held power, strength, and greatness. Under the brilliant command of General Belisarius, the Byzantine army under Justinian recaptured North Africa from the Vandals, reclaiming Carthage and key territories along the North African coast. These initial victories were powerful signals, heralding the resurgence of an empire long thought to be in decline. But that was just the beginning. Justinian never stopped dreaming of a fully united Roman Empire once again, stretching from Spain to Syria. To realize this, Justinian pushed forward into Italy, where the Ostrogoths held control. It was a prolonged and costly campaign, but under Belisarius's leadership, the Byzantines retook Rome and eventually Ravenna, the Ostrogoth capital. These victories marked a major turning point in the effort to restore the Roman Empire. But they also brought immense challenges. Maintaining control over the newly reclaimed territories proved difficult, and the empire faced growing financial, military, and social strains. Even so, for a brief time, Justinian's dream of a unified Roman Empire no longer seemed so far away. He had reclaimed vast territories, elevating the Byzantine Empire into a superpower of the ancient world. However, the dream would not last. Justinian's great victories drained massive resources, and the empire was soon beset by increasingly severe problems, from wars to plagues. Nevertheless, the military campaigns and reforms carried out by Justinian solidified his power, affirmed the greatness of the Byzantine Empire, and proved to the world that the Roman Empire had never truly been defeated. Though the empire could not hold onto these victories forever, the desire to restore a mighty empire like Rome remained a lasting symbol of Justinian's ambition and determination. When Justinian I ascended the throne, the Byzantine Empire faced a significant challenge not only militarily, but also in how to govern a vast empire with complex internal issues. To achieve the goal of restoring and maintaining power, Justinian understood that only a strong legal system could create stability and order in society. This is why the civil code Corpus Juris Civilis became one of the greatest legacies of his reign, and a symbol of the wisdom and strategic vision of an emperor. By the 6th century, more than 500 years after the Western Roman Empire had declined, the legal system of the Byzantine Empire had become chaotic, lacking unity and clarity. Legal documents, imperial decrees, and decisions by previous emperors were scattered, contradictory, and difficult to enforce. earlier laws had not been drafted systematically and lacked compatibility with the actual social conditions of the Byzantine Empire at the time. To solve this problem, Justinian decided to launch a comprehensive legal reform. He assembled a team of scholars, led by Minister Tribonian, to revise the empire's entire legal system. Justinian's goal was to create a unified, understandable, and applicable code that accurately reflected the principles and values of the Byzantine Empire while preserving the legacy of the ancient Roman Empire. The Civil Code, Corpus Juris Civilis. Ultimately, the result of this legal reform was the Corpus Juris Civilis, or Civil Code, completed in 534. This code consisted of three main parts: digesta, or pandictae, a compilation of previous Roman legal texts, scientifically and systematically arranged. It included the opinions of famous jurists to help judges apply the law more effectively in specific cases. Institutiones, a textbook for students and legal practitioners, providing an overview of the basic principles of Roman law. It served as the legal education manual of the Byzantine system. Codex Justinianus, the most important section, compiling all imperial decrees and decisions from the time of Hadrian to Justinian. The Codex removed conflicting texts and retained only those provisions suitable for Byzantine society. In addition, this legal code included imperial decrees and decisions issued by Justinian, applied uniformly across the entire empire. The legacy and importance of Corpus Juris Civilis. Not only did it provide clear regulations on the rights and duties of citizens, but Corpus Juris Civilis also had a profound impact on the development of legal systems in Europe for thousands of years to come. This code became the foundation for many countries in building modern legal frameworks, from Western nations like France and Italy to Northern European countries. But the legacy of Corpus Juris Civilis did not stop at legal regulations. This code also symbolized the wisdom and strategic vision of Justinian. It was evidence of an emperor who sought not only to restore the empire territorially, but also to rebuild a solid foundation for society, protect citizens' rights, and maintain social order. With the creation of Corpus Juris Civilis, Justinian left a legacy not only for the Byzantine Empire, but for the Western world. This code became the cornerstone of many modern legal systems, a lasting contribution that affirmed Justinian's place in history. The importance of the code in the Byzantine era. During Justinian's reign, Corpus Juris Civilis not only helped solidify the emperor's power, but also helped the empire endure. The code resolved countless disputes and ensured political and social stability within the empire. Wars, rebellions, and court power struggles were all governed by the legal frameworks Justinian had established. Although the Byzantine Empire could not maintain its power forever, Corpus Juris Civilis enabled it to retain a significant portion of its influence for centuries. Justinian's legal legacy continued to live on in Western legal systems, a vivid testament to the foresight and brilliance of an emperor. Thus, Corpus Juris Civilis was not just an ordinary legal code. It became a crucial part of Justinian's great career, a legacy that not only helped him restore the Roman Empire, but also paved the way for the development of modern legal systems. This code demonstrates that, although political power may fade with time, spiritual and intellectual legacies endure forever. In the year 532, a shocking event occurred in the capital of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, directly threatening the throne of Emperor Justinian. It was the Nika Revolt, a massive riot, not only a military challenge, but also a test of Justinian's resilience and decisiveness in maintaining power. The origin of the revolt. The Nika revolt was not just a public outcry against the government. It was the accumulation of many social and political tensions. The situation reached its peak when crowds in Constantinople, mainly composed of members of the city's famous chariot racing factions, began expressing dissatisfaction with the emperor's policies. During Justinian's reign, decisions on taxation, government administration, and strict reforms sparked resentment across various social classes, from nobles to commoners. However, this revolt wasn't merely a social uprising. It was a struggle for power between the racing factions, an inseparable part of Constantinople's public life. These factions, especially the Blues and the Greens, wielded great power and political influence within the court. The conflict between these factions quickly exploded into a full-scale riot, with thousands of citizens participating, leading to bloody clashes throughout the city. Justinian's government reacted forcefully, but the situation spiraled out of control when rioters began destroying the city and setting important buildings ablaze. Reaching the boiling point, the Nika riot rapidly escalated into a full-blown rebellion. The calls from the racing factions demanded not only changes in government, but sweeping reforms in the emperor's rule. At one point, the people nearly took over all central areas of Constantinople, leaving Justinian feeling overwhelmed and afraid. At that moment, Emperor Justinian stood before a tough choice: confront the rebels or retreat and abandon the empire to others. It was a decisive moment in his reign, as his power was threatened more than ever. Fear spread through the palace, and even some close officials advised him to flee and save his life. Theodora, symbol of resilience. In that perilous moment, when all hope seemed lost, it was Justinian's wife, Empress Theodora, who stood firm and encouraged her husband not to give up. Theodora, a former dancer and astute queen, was one of the most influential figures in Justinian's reign. Although she didn't come from a royal background, Theodora demonstrated outstanding intelligence and determination. In a tense council, Theodora told Justinian that if he fled, he would have nothing left to protect and would no longer be worthy of the throne. Her words ignited a flame of resilience in Justinian's heart. With his wife's determination, the emperor decided to stay and face the revolt. Justinian's resolve and the suppression of the riot. With Theodora's resolve and support from loyal generals, especially General Belisarius, Justinian ordered the military to suppress the revolt with force. The command was clear and uncompromising. The revolt must be crushed immediately. General Belisarius, with his military prowess, led the Byzantine army in a brutal crackdown. Tens of thousands were killed in the fierce attack. The Nika revolt, though causing serious losses and a major societal crisis, had a profound effect on Justinian's authority. After crushing the uprising, Emperor Justinian consolidated his power, and his rule became stronger than ever. Consequences and legacy of the revolt. The Nika revolt was not only a bloody uprising, but also a test of Justinian's leadership and resilience. It marked a pivotal point in his reign, signaling the empire's shift from chaos to stability and reconstruction. After quelling the rebellion, Justinian was determined to restore Constantinople and rebuild its grand structures. The most prominent construction from this period was Hagia Sophia, a symbol of revival and imperial power. Hagia Sophia wasn't just a religious monument. It was a bold statement of the Byzantine Empire's strength and unyielding spirit under Justinian's rule. Although the Nika revolt was a great disaster, it demonstrated the strength of will and leadership ability of Justinian. Despite facing adversity and immense challenges, he never backed down. The resilience of Justinian and Theodora during that moment left a powerful legacy, laying the foundation for the Byzantine Empire's development and prosperity in the years that followed. After the bloody Nika revolt, while Justinian's empire was still reeling from the devastating aftermath of the conflict, the Byzantine emperor made a bold decision to restore the city of Constantinople, not just with military might, but with a monumental structure, a powerful symbol of imperial power and religious faith. That structure was none other than Hagia Sophia, a magnificent church that would not only transform the face of the city, but leave an indelible mark on world history. A monument born from ruins. At the time the Nika revolt ended, much of Constantinople had been destroyed, especially religious and public buildings. Hagia Sophia, the empire's greatest sanctuary, had been severely damaged. It was a moment of crisis, but also an opportunity for Justinian to showcase his vision and resolve. Rebuilding the church was not simply about restoration. Justinian envisioned a symbol, a structure that would embody the essence of the Byzantine Empire and the authority of the emperor. He aimed to construct not only the largest church, but the most beautiful, commanding reverence for the power of God as well as for his own rule. With the help of two leading architects of the era, Anthemius of Tralles and Isidore of Miletus, Justinian set out to build a church that was not merely religious architecture, but a masterpiece, a declaration of the Byzantine Empire's status as the living legacy of ancient Rome. Completed in 537 AD, Hagia Sophia was not just a building. It was a marvel of construction history. With its massive dome, a feat of groundbreaking engineering, Hagia Sophia stood as a testament to the era's advancements in art and architecture. The grand dome, rising 56 meters above ground, appeared to float in the air, overwhelming anyone who entered. This dome structure was not only a technical triumph, it was also a symbol of the divine. It was designed so that light streamed through windows encircling the dome's base, creating a mystical glow, as though a supernatural presence shone from above. Each ray of light felt like a manifestation of God, a link between heaven and earth. Creating a sacred and serene atmosphere, Hagia Sophia became a place where all worshippers could feel the presence of the divine. Not only did it feature a grand dome, but Hagia Sophia was also adorned with intricate golden mosaics, paintings, and religious iconography steeped in Christian symbolism. These elements made Hagia Sophia a religious marvel, reflecting the sacred authority of the Byzantine Empire, a symbol of power and faith. To Justinian, Hagia Sophia was more than architecture. It was a symbol of imperial power and Christian faith that he sought to uphold throughout his reign. Justinian understood that to restore the Roman Empire and maintain stability, he needed more than political and military force. He needed a structure that could unite the social classes and display the grandeur of the empire, from emperor to citizen. Hagia Sophia was not only a triumph of art and engineering, it was also a fusion of secular power and divine sanctity. It hosted imperial worship ceremonies and symbolized the emperor's authority over foreign states. Its vast dome, shimmering mosaics, and ethereal light created not only a sacred space, but also a signal of eternity, just like the empire Justinian wished to build. Hagia Sophia became an eternal emblem of the Byzantine Empire. When gazing upon it, one didn't just see architectural splendor, but also Justinian's resilient leadership in reviving the Roman Empire. It wasn't merely a church, it was where Justinian manifested his power, asserting Byzantium's position in the ancient world. Although the Byzantine Empire would gradually decline and Hagia Sophia would endure many changes, the structure remains a vivid symbol of the strength and timelessness of the Byzantine Empire. Hagia Sophia is not only Justinian's legacy, but the legacy of an entire Eastern civilization, its culture, religion, and artistry. Today, Hagia Sophia is more than a beautiful building. It is a timeless emblem of the union between power and faith, a monument to a glorious era in human history. At the height of Justinian I's reign, marked by impressive military victories and monumental achievements like the Hagia Sophia, an unforeseeable catastrophe struck the Byzantine Empire. Around the 540s, one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, known as the Justinian Plague, erupted and ravaged the empire. This was a profound shock not only in terms of human loss, but also in economic and societal collapse, causing the Byzantine Empire to weaken drastically and never fully recover. The outbreak of the plague. The Justinian Plague, often referred to as the Black Death of the ancient world, is believed to have originated in Asia and spread through trade routes across the Middle East and Europe. Due to the empire's vast connections, the disease quickly reached Constantinople, the capital of Byzantium. Transmitted through rodents and fleas, the plague killed millions within the empire over a span of just a few years. The city of Constantinople, the heart of the empire, could not escape its devastation. Crowded streets, public spaces, and residential areas became breeding grounds for infection, plunging the city into chaos. With no medical knowledge or treatments available, the infected had virtually no chance of survival. People suffered in terror, and the world seemed to come to a standstill in the grip of the disaster. Severe consequences. The plague did not only claim lives, it shook every facet of Byzantine society. An entire generation was lost, including not just ordinary citizens, but also officials and soldiers. A significant portion of the labor force, including farmers and artisans, perished, halting production and plunging the economy into crisis. Moreover, the plague heavily disrupted Justinian's ongoing military campaigns. The Byzantine army, already stretched thin from prolonged and costly campaigns, now suffered a massive depletion in manpower. This made it increasingly difficult to maintain control over recently reclaimed territories. From North Africa to Italy, earlier victories turned into burdens as resources and troops dwindled. Economic and social collapse. The plague devastated the Byzantine economy. Agricultural output plummeted, tax revenues dried up, and trade networks fractured. The cities, once thriving commercial centers, lost their prominence. Trade routes broke down, and sustaining military efforts became increasingly difficult. Population decline and labor shortages pushed Byzantine society into disarray. Rural areas, home to most of the empire's peasants, became desolate. Although the plague didn't bring immediate collapse, it delivered a long-term shock that deepened the empire's inherent vulnerabilities. Despite this, Justinian was not one to surrender easily. He continued efforts to restore the empire, trying to maintain power and preserve his architectural legacy. However, recovery proved more difficult by the day, as the plague attacked not just the people, but the empire's very administrative foundations. Ongoing wars in the empire's western provinces, compounded by internal struggles, made it harder to preserve the gains Justinian had achieved. The Byzantine Empire under Justinian faced mounting challenges, and signs of decline grew increasingly evident. Yet, Justinian left behind a grand legacy, not only in architecture and law, but in his resilience during crisis. The Justinian plague severely weakened the empire, but his accomplishments, like the Corpus Juris Civilis and the Hagia Sophia, endure as timeless symbols. The Byzantine Empire under Justinian could not remain prosperous forever, but his legacy stood the test of time. The rise and decline of Byzantium serve as testimony to history's constant change, where every crisis leaves behind a mark and a heritage for generations to come. The great legacy of Justinian. Though Justinian I's reign was filled with turmoil and challenges, it left behind an extraordinary legacy for the Byzantine Empire and the world. Even though the empire he built did not last, and many of the territories he reconquered were eventually lost, his achievements in law, architecture, and military affairs had far-reaching impacts that still resonate today. Corpus Juris Civilis. One of his greatest legacies is the Corpus Juris Civilis, the civil law code. This monumental legal work not only stabilized society and the empire at the time, but also became the foundation for European legal systems for centuries. The Corpus Juris Civilis was more than a legal code. It was a symbol of clarity, justice, and reason in governance. It deeply influenced modern legal traditions, especially in Western systems. Architecture and power. Hagia Sophia. The most magnificent architectural achievement of Justinian's reign, the Hagia Sophia, was more than a church. It symbolized imperial power and religious unity under the emperor's rule. The Hagia Sophia's massive dome, with its timeless design and engineering, reflected Justinian's unyielding vision to rebuild and defend the Byzantine Empire. It is not just a testament to architectural prowess, but also a legacy of faith and power, enduring as a wonder of the world even after Byzantium's fall. In military affairs, Justinian not only expanded the empire, but also held power for an extended period. Though his campaigns were costly and unsustainable, victories such as reclaiming North Africa, Italy, and other territories helped the empire retain strong influence during his reign. His military and administrative reforms bolstered his authority and preserved order during volatile times. However, Justinian's legacy goes beyond victories and monuments. It was during great crises like the Nika Revolt and the Justinian plague that he demonstrated remarkable leadership and determination. Despite facing enormous calamities, from urban rebellion to a devastating pandemic, he never surrendered. Instead, he fought on, restored authority, and upheld the empire. It was in these darkest moments that his legacy shone brightest, a testament to the willpower and resolve of a great emperor. Though the Byzantine Empire could not last forever, Justinian's legacy deeply influenced cultures, legal systems, and religious thought for millennia. His civil code laid the groundwork for Western legal frameworks, and architectural marvels like the Hagia Sophia remain powerful emblems of imperial and Christian grandeur. Without doubt, even as his reign came to an end, what Justinian left behind still lives on in history. He was not only a conqueror, but a reformer, a builder, and a guardian of Byzantine heritage, with a visionary spirit and unbreakable determination. Justinian's legacy will continue to be remembered and revered as an inseparable part of world history, a lasting testament to the power of an emperor in the face of adversity